I'm going to go over a couple of different ways to make dovetails. I'm going to start just in the normal way, tails first. I've got them marked out normally. Most of these tips have to do with the pin board. So I'm just going to start by cutting these tails as usual. Instead of sawing out the waste between the tails, I'm going to chop it out with a chisel. So I've got a board underneath here to protect the bench. I want to clamp this down to the workbench. I always want to be, if I'm pounding on something, I want to be over the bench and ideally near a leg. So what I'm going to do, I'm standing, behind the piece, so to speak. I've got a chisel. It's going to fit well within there. The bevel is facing away from me, and I'm going to start about 1/8 of an inch away from the baseline. And chisel's pretty much vertical, and give it a whack. Now I'm going to move away from me a little bit. Now, might need a little narrower chisel here. So I've taken out the first little bit. I'm going to move a little closer. And then once again, away from me. A little levering out there. So I'm realizing that chisel's a little on the wide side for this. I'm going to grab a different chisel. There we go. So I can move a little further away now. And each time I'm going to move a little closer to my baseline. So what I'm trying to do is of course move back to the baseline, and I don't have to chisel out all of this material. So now I'm maybe a 32nd from there. Get rid of some of that. And now I'm in my baseline. I'm angling slightly away from myself, from vertical a little bit, so that I'm undercutting a little bit. Okay, so I'll do the rest of that from the other side. I'll now move on to the next one. Now I just need to get down to where I was cutting before, which is about halfway. Okay, that's stuck in there. I'll get that out when I get it apart. There we go. Okay, we'll take that apart and get those out of there. Okay, so that method some people find is easier than sawing and then chiseling. So you might try it both ways and see what works for you. So that looks good. All right, next up we'll mark the pins. I'm going to use what's referred to as the blue tape method here. So I've got a piece of blue tape, blue masking tape. I'm going to put on here. I want to have it even with one edge. I basically want to cover this whole end with blue tape. And then I want to trim it to the size. So this is going to make it much easier to see where I need to saw. Now, the other part of this is a couple of jigs, and they have to do with aligning the parts here. So there are two parts to this jig. This is a square piece with a piece of in this case 1/4 inch MDF on top. Doesn't really matter what it is. What matters is that this hangs over the edge a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to align this on here like that. So it's registered like that, and when I put it in the vise, this edge is now sticking up out of the bench by this much. Now keep in mind this is square. So I'm just going to clamp that in the vise like that. Now I'm going to set like that, right? And that's still the same dimension. And I can use that to support the back end of the tailboard, right? So I go from that to that. This other jig is used to help me align this, right? Because I need to get it aligned this way and this way and this way. So this jig will handle all three of those issues. So I'm going to put this up against here, and I want to align this piece with the baseline there. Okay, so I'm just sighting down. I can see I'm lined up with my baseline there. And I'm going to use a spring clamp to clamp this on. That's why that notch is there. So now, when I set this on here, I need to move the clamp a little bit. There we go. This edge is going to align here, so that gets me this dimension. This piece butts up against here, and it's also butted up against here, so that gets me alignment this way, and this piece also gets me aligned that way. So I just set that down, slide it over, and I'm good to go. Okay, now I'm going to use my marking knife as usual, but instead of cutting into the end grain to mark this, I'm cutting through the blue tape. And it doesn't take much to do that, so usually one pass is enough. All right, now I'm going to take off the blue tape where the waste is. Maybe I should do that from over here. This is probably the hardest part, is getting the tape off. There we go. There you go. Sometimes, when you're marking with the knife, it doesn't quite get into that back corner. Okay, so that makes it much easier to see where I'm sawing, and also gives me a sense of sawing next to the line, right? So when I get my saw up here, get that up a little bit higher. Now it's very obvious, right? I want to cut into the tape. I want to cut right next to the tape. So we'll go ahead and do that. Oops. Okay, then the rest of this is like any other pin board. I could saw that out or chop it out.